Hello, hello, and Assalamu alaikum. This is Farah Danish, your calm autism mom. So today, this is our 24th episode, by the way, and I'm still on the topic of homeschooling, and I want to address some confusion, some misconceptions people have about homeschooling, and whether you choose to homeschool or not, this episode ideally is not to convince you about homeschooling, right? That's completely your decision and should always be your decision. Um, Whether you homeschool your child or not, there's certain things you should know about your child. You should know how to work with your child. You should know what your child's triggers are, what makes them click, what their learning style is, regardless of whether you choose to homeschool or not. Okay. So with that, I just want to share some of the things that I did. And I think I've done this in my previous episode. If you have missed that, do go back and watch it. It's episode number 21, where I spoke a lot about what schools don't teach you and things that you can do when you're homeschooling. And I got a lot of feedback from that where moms were asking me, how do we do this? Like, how is this even going to work? Because I don't see myself being disciplined enough. Yep, that was the key word. I don't see myself being disciplined enough to work with my child. And that is what this vlog, this episode is supposed to address. Okay. So I want to walk you through some of the things that I did. And for me to do that, I have to go way back and talk about what homeschooling meant to me when I started off. And exactly like most of the parents out here, when my husband told me that, you know what, we've done everything, the school system is clearly frustrating us, it's causing so much anxiety, it's expensive. That is mainly where the anxiety was coming from, right? Every day had to be a winning day for us. And if it wasn't, I kept thinking about the money that we were pouring into this whole setup, to make everything work. And if one thing, one element in that whole setup didn't work for whatever reason, it would have an impact on everything. Everything would collapse, right? So today, let me just break down these major misconceptions. And before I do that, I want to talk to you about what I thought homeschooling was and how my journey with and about homeschooling changed. So when my husband, again, back to the same story, when my husband told me that, let's get Suleiman out of the whole schooling system and let's give this a shot. I mean, what do we got to lose? If it doesn't work, we put him back into school. And I'm like sitting and thinking, okay, so we've tried all the experts and specialists out there, and all of a sudden, I'm supposed to believe that I can make this work. That is definitely something I should be doing. Said no autism mom ever. And that is exactly what I said. I was like, okay, I don't know how this is going to work. And it was so difficult to get him in the school in the first place. If I take him out, which school is going to take him? He's at a disadvantage anyway. Who's going to take him? So after a lot of, tug of war and battles with, myself and arguments with my husband, we came to a conclusion that, what, at the end of the day, we don't really see a future in the schooling system for him where he can independently function. And that would be a big problem because we are actually feeding into the system where we are conditioning Suleiman to believe that he can never work on his own and that he always needs someone supervising him, managing him very closely. We knew that for a fact because the school system keeps getting more and more difficult, and the bullying, the peer pressure, the social pressure would eventually add up and cause more anxiety than it already is. Um, so keeping that in mind, grudgingly, I agreed to go ahead with this. Now, to do this, I still remember I turned my entire room turned Suleiman's room into a classroom. So I got this IKEA desk for him and, the desk chair set. I got him all these IKEA assortments and, knickknacks. everything to make his room look like the perfect IKEA room. I got his room painted. So it was like this entire wall was just done up with clouds and waves on it to make it look really calming and soothing. He had a swing in his room. The entire floor, like one half of his room, was all padded so that he could run and do somersaults. Like you name it, we did that. Okay. We created the sensory perfect room Suleiman needed. We even got meditation music. We got kids jingles, the kind of video library we needed, audio library we needed, everything we needed for him. And the resource teachers was ours anyway. We were paying for the resource teachers. So she stayed back with us, and she would come to my house instead of Suleiman going to school and studying. The same teacher was, working with him at home. And let's face it, even in school, it's not like the class teacher had time for him. So she was teaching him in school. And when I think about it now, he was actually just paying to be in a physical space, because there was really not enough room or time for social experiences. We're always led to believe that the child needs to go to school for those social experiences. But the kind of social experiences that our children have are really not, for our kids at least, not really healthy or not really productive. Okay. So doing everything at home meant that he was free financially for us as well. I was free to allocate those resources towards other things like, one-to-one swimming classes for him, which is what we did. And we used to go to the mall. One of the days during the week, we would dedicate to just going to the mall and hanging out at the mall or hanging out at a park or at a beach. It was anywhere and everywhere, right? Could be the museum, it could be anywhere. So the sensory challenges that he had where he couldn't be outdoors long enough, that started reducing. So he kind of got desensitized. And I remember he had challenges with going to supermarkets. The visual, auditory, um, sensory onslaught for him was too much to handle. And all of that started reducing because our main agenda was making Suleiman comfortable in his skin, because it was very difficult to go outside. So our whole goal objectives for him changed. He was still doing his science, he was still doing his English, he was still doing his math, but he had ample time to learn life skills, which he didn't have going to school, right? If he was spending a majority of his hours in school, he was coming home at 3 and then he was made to do his homework. He really wasn't getting any downtime and he needed more than, regular kids do. He needed more downtime, which he didn't have because, his resource teacher had to leave. So when that became a bit difficult for me to manage, when his resource teacher decided that, okay, she needs to leave, I was like, okay. And then, yes, we were leaving. Now I remember clearly. We were leaving Dubai as well. We were moving to another country. And I was like thinking, 4 kids, how am I going to homeschool? This whole homeschooling thing may not just work out in Malaysia. But I was wrong. In Malaysia, we had I made sure that we stayed in a condo where there was a pool available. So with 4 kids, my younger two was, a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I think I mentioned this in the previous episode as well, that my goal, I had to really break it down. So my goal for the younger two was to be comfortable in the house. How? Be comfortable with touching food. That was my goal for them. Okay. Be comfortable touching food, understand how to fold clothes, because, they get to use both their hands, and water the plants, clean the balcony with the maid. So my help over there, my temporary help that I had over there, part-time help that I had over there, my younger two were fascinated by the way she used to work in the house. So she used to work with them and they used to, work together as a team. And that was great. So I didn't teach them, but we forget that human beings are naturally curious beings, right? And so by modeling it out to them, they were actually engaging in pretend play. And so that was taken care of, right? Then I had my older 2 kids. One of them was Suleiman, my son on the spectrum. So while I was giving one-to-one with him, my second child was doing things that he could do work on independently, which is reading, creative writing, or teaching the younger two reading with them. And so there's always something to keep him busy. And that way I was like shuffling around. And I made sure that I wasn't teaching for more than what, 2.5 hours. Some days 3, although I rarely feel that I ever did 3 hours. But yeah, 2 hours is all I did of schooling. And the other hours was basically housework or working as a team together. And that taught Suleiman social skills, the skills he needed to feel like he's part of the family, a contributing member of the family. So, this whole idea that we have about homeschooling is that you have to do it all by yourself. Trust me, I've been there, and I want to share more of the kind of experiences I had with homeschooling, not just about myself, but other families who were homeschooling, specifically co-ops. So if I'm working with Suleiman and I'm doing my homeschooling with him and I don't have time for my other kids, I would choose the day that my other kids were busy with co-ops, so they could be dropped off somewhere at for a co-op, or I could have a co-op at my place and I could be in my room working, and another mom decides that, okay, because this mom has a special needs child and she needs to work with him, we will take over the class. I've had those days as well. And the homeschool community, because of the nature of the community itself, they are very, very accommodating, right? And they're always thinking out of the box, and that's what makes them amazing. So there's no set system, and there shouldn't be when you're working with kids, right? None of us were experts, but we all were experts in some topic or the other, and we would always be more than happy to share that. um, my younger two, I mean, I'm a big believer in arts. I feel children should know how to create. Children, it's therapeutic for them, for everyone, whether it's neurodiverse or neurotypical. And I would have an art teacher coming to the house working with my 4 kids. And some of our greatest memories as a family is sitting together and doing art together. And a majority of these, in fact, all the teachers that my kids have become, like family to us. We're still in touch with them. um, and and I think that's one of the main reasons why our kids never looked at them as teachers, because they became family. And then there are also parents that I met over there who didn't teach their kids at all. They had somebody else come home to teach their kids all the subjects, or they would have their children work with do online classes. So or there would be some who would buy on those curriculums where you get to homeschool by having your classes online. So the traditional homeschooling system, where we all think that, okay, everyone sits around a table and the mother sits in the middle and she's teaching 5 kids or 4 kids together, it's nothing like that. The beauty of homeschooling is that it can look any way you want it to. You could be working, and I did this. I schooled only 4 times a week. Yeah. The fifth day was a break for me to organize myself for the coming week. So any lesson plans or anything that I wanted the kids to do, differently, or a new place that I wanted to go and I wanted to research that, I kept the fifth day for that, i.e., my Fridays were meant for that. From Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the kids did their usual schooling. The fifth day, they would just relax, do their reading basically, or do some coloring and drawing, anything creative basically. TV was off limits. So in the morning, there was no TV. Kids did not watch any TV in the morning. So, the whole thing about if mom's not doing anything with the kids are watching something on TV. No, in our case, that was not the case. And the kids knew that they could not switch on the TV in the morning. And yeah, evenings were all about, hanging around by the pool or going down for a walk. We had to be out of the house in the evening. And by evening, I mean by 4:35, we'd be out. So I would give myself that room, that break, how many breaks I needed. I made sure that I had embedded my little breaks in between, in the middle of what a day looked like. And I have to say, I'm so proud of myself to be able to, for someone who couldn't take care of two kids by herself, I was able to, take care of all my four kids and homeschool them, just because I sensibly planned around the day and I sensibly planned out what I want to outsource. Um, some of the other systems that approaches that I saw was where families would like, I remember being part of a beach schooling community where there was a family who had a summer home. Like, I mean, come on, in Malaysia there's no such thing as summer home, I would imagine, but they had their family home or whatever by the beach, and it was a massive house, so they would invite people for a stay over, so that they could get up early in the morning, early enough to hit the beach and check out, like hit the beach at a time when the sun is not out so that they can go and observe nocturnal life at the beach. That was fascinating. And all these experiences, I have to say, has been so enriching for the kids. And that's why when people ask me what curriculum, and I always want to turn back and say that, the curriculum is life. It doesn't matter whether you did the British curriculum or you did the Australian curriculum or you did the Indian system or the Pakistani system or the American system. There's certain things that you need to know about just living life, which unfortunately, at least for our kids, for neurodiverse kids, they don't get to experience that when they are in a schooling system. And you might want to disagree with me on this, but I fully stand behind the statement that, kids that go to school, unfortunately, do live in a bubble. They do. Okay. They are protected from a lot of things. Like, and when I say protected, they predominantly interact with kids their age. Okay. And they don't get, so when these kids are expected to go out and just talk to people who are not their age, and you would have experienced this yourself, that kids these days find it very difficult to talk to people from another age group within family itself. So that is something, unfortunately, that, when you spend so many hours with kids and people around your same age, that's how is that preparing you for real life? So and then the school system is also very particular that, you don't have older age kids in the same class as like an 8-year old cannot be sitting with a 6-year old. But there is so much to gain from that kind of interaction. There's so much a 6-year old can learn from an 8-year old or a 9-year old that they just can't from another 6-year old. you know so I think what I would like to end this with is that homeschooling, or whatever kind of schooling it is that you want, you're the boss. That's the beauty of homeschooling, which a traditional mainstream school cannot offer you, with all its best inclusion departments. And I'm sure that schools are trying real hard to accommodate all these varying needs, but the whole idea of the school system is to teach in a group setting. And yes, you're going to tell me that, but that's what's preparing our kids for the real world, because they need to be able to work as a team and all of that. But that's true, and that's absolutely true. But that's also ignoring the fact that children are ready to learn in that kind of environment. The school is not training children. And now, when I say training, that's the wrong word I'm going to use. I'm going to take that back. The school may not be a safe place for your children to learn those skills. So when the school expects you to learn in pairs or in groups, it's already made this assumption that your child can work in a group or in pair. There's a lot of neurotypicals out there who struggle with that. They get anxiety working in a group. And then there is nobody to manage or to help them how to work effectively in a group. So you have fights, you have, and I know this for a fact because so many moms have complained that, the children are made to work in a group and it's not working out. It leaves behind ill feelings. So I'm not sure what learning is happening here, really, because if there's nobody there to help them navigate those feelings, those emotions, and they have been left unresolved, that's another problem. And our kids can't advocate for themselves. So if they're made to feel less or stupid or not given the same kind of responsibility other kids are given in that group, our kids can feel that. Anyway, that's a different conversation for another time. Do let me know if you want me to talk a lot about that. I'm happy to do so. So, bottom line, kids learn in an environment where they feel safe, where they feel they are a contributing member, a valuable member of that team, of that unit. That's where they thrive. That's where they learn well. And if those that basic need is ignored, and we put a child in a school making the assumption that they will normalize, um, I hate to break this to you, no, it's not happening. They're not normalizing themselves. Look, it doesn't just happen by itself. The trauma most of us, and I can say this so confidently, that most of us have with some of the teachers who were just not informed enough, would say things to us, have become part of our DNA. Like, I still, for the longest time, felt that I was not good enough to do so many things just because some of the teachers didn't like me. And I hated the subject because I didn't like those teachers. Only to go back now and I'm like, you know what? If I had a different teacher, I would have definitely taken up that subject in university. But that's what happens. So, like I said, our kids can't voice this. Our kids don't know that it's not right for a teacher to speak like that to them, or for someone to make them feel a certain way. They don't know this because we, as their parents, experienced it, and we think we were led to believe that that was okay, right? And so we didn't know any better. We don't teach our kids any better, and that's what happens. So I hope this was helpful in terms of explaining to you that there are so many different types of homeschooling options available, and there is no right or wrong. One year of homeschooling can look very different from the next year, but the fun aspect of homeschooling is what you decide it to be. For us, it was to be able to travel extensively, to especially off peak hours. I mean, that was like the bonus. And get children to try different types of food, meet different types of people, interact with different type of children. And I say type of children, I mean by children who came from a completely and entirely different culture, who did things differently, who played different kinds of games. And when I think back now about our homeschooling journey, I know we've been to places where the kids my children would play with didn't even speak the same language, but they still managed to find a way to play together, and I think that was absolutely beautiful. So I hope this was helpful. Do send me questions or any doubts that you have about, what ifs and what nots, and more about curriculum, because there are tons of curriculums out there. And even there, you have the freedom to choose which curriculum works for your child. You can take a mix of Australian, you can take a mix of Indian, you can take a mix of Singaporean. I did Singapore maths, and Suleiman thrived with Singapore maths, let me tell you that. But for everything else, I chose different curriculums. And now, alhamdulillah, he can read, okay? And he can understand a lot of things now, concepts in maths I'm talking about. So that worked for us. Let me know what worked for you in the past when you worked with your kids, and what didn't work. Most importantly, what is stopping you now, after having heard this, to consider that maybe I could give this a shot? Because is it the freedom that's scaring you? Or is it the fact that it's your child's life in your hands and you're not sure that you're not going to mess it up? Really, nobody knows what they're doing, but you'll only know when you do it. And it's your child. Only you know best how to work with your child. Absolutely take guidance. I'm all in for that. Take the guidance, but you know what? Nobody can give you a cookie cutter system of this is exactly what you need to do with your child. Forming a relationship with your child can look very different for you, very different for another mom. And that is where the you factor comes in. Okay, so take care of yourselves, moms, and I can't wait to hear from you. Do like and subscribe. Bye.